Joe Biden giving the pardons to the J6 Commission, to Fauci, to his family members. It's an extreme admission of guilt by Joe Biden and his administration. And I think President Trump is going to continue to smoke out all of the extreme corruption that we've seen from the past 4 years and restore power back to the American people.
The sleeper issue was the condoned invasion, the sponsored invasion by our own government. Also, the gender madness that overtly threatened, in particular, girls and women. And I think that awakened a lot of people to grievous wrongs that the left was willing to inflict on the American people via their Democratic Party. And people rose up and said, we can't do this anymore. We can't tolerate this. There is a limit. Everybody's talking, Democrats and Republicans, about the return of common sense.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. What a big first half day President Trump had in it. By about 2 o'clock, he had me tired. That guy was on a roll yesterday. I don't know how he did it. And it was unbelievable. He was giving speech after speech, event after event of executive action. We got it all. I mean, literally, like 12:02, I got to notice, hey, the White House website is changed. And it was very clear that things are different. What a difference that 12 o'clock made. I mean, it was like the rain stopping and the sun coming out. It looked, by the way, all day, it looked like he was having a blast. He was enjoying it. He was soaking it in. We'll talk about that in just a minute, because I really do believe that because he'd been out of office for 4 years and he had so much time to think, we've talked about this in the past, that he was relishing in this. He was enjoying it. He kind of knew what to expect, right? The first time, everything's new to you. But even when he was greeted by Biden, it was like, I know this. I've been here. President Trump's new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, tweeting out last night by the numbers, President Trump's historic first day, 42 executive orders, memoranda, proclamations, 115 personnel actions. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. More than 200 executive actions, 60 minutes of press Q&A, 3 historic speeches, more to come. By the way, I think he engaged more with the press yesterday than President Biden did all last year. And Marco Rubio, was sworn in as Secretary of State this morning by J.D. Vance after getting confirmed 99-0. All right, we're going to talk a lot about personnel, a lot about people. Before I talk about those people, though, let me tell you about a great guy that I've had the honor of getting to know. His name is Leo Grillo. He is the founder of Delta Rescue. If you've watched the show before, you know how much I love what Leo has done. He has started with one Doberman that he rescued and then built from there the world's largest no-kill sanctuary. It's not a shelter, it's a sanctuary. First time I ever talked to Leo, he made sure I got that across. What that means is he takes in malnutritioned dogs, cats, all sorts of animals that need care, that have been abandoned, abused. I mean, he just is such an amazing guy, what he has done, and I love to support the work he is doing. He's based out in California. If you go to deltarescue.org, you can take a look at some of the work that they do and the sanctuary that exists out there. They're right near the wildfires. I talked to Leo last week. He was so prepared for this. It's amazing. It just shows how smart the guy is and how prepared. But a lot of people are giving up their animals. He's continuing to take them in. So I made a donation personally last week. If you can, please go to deltarescue.org to learn more, to make a donation to help the great work that he's doing. Greatly appreciated. deltarescue.org. But look, guys, as much as yesterday was great, and we're going to talk about this in just a second with our amazing panel, the New York Times, the Today Show, these guys just couldn't help themselves. The New York Times saying their headline was, President paints a grim picture of U.S. in inaugural speech. You know what I thought? I thought the president did a job, laid out a speech that said, I got elected by campaigning on certain things to make the country better, and I'm actually going to do what I said. Imagine that, a politician doing that. Yeah, maybe we focus on that. I'm going to talk a lot about that. It just so much in one day. It really was shock and awe. There was a funny moment, though, that I want to just play you. This was Peter Doocy asking President Trump if he had the traditional letter in the drawer from the outgoing president. And here's what President Trump said.
President Trump, did President Biden leave you a letter?
He may have. Wait. Don't they leave it in the desk? I don't know. Oh,
What's in there?
thank you, Peter. It could have been years before we found it. Wow. Thank you.
What does it say on the outside?
Maybe we should all read it together.
Let's read it.
Well, maybe I'll read it first and then make that
That
determination.
sounds great.
Peter, thank you very much. I may not have seen this for months.
Happy to help with the passing of the torch.
I did. I left Tim one in the desk just like this.
What are you talking about in the limo?
Unification of our country. You know, I didn't know that he gave a pardon to his family because he did it during my speech.
He didn't tell you in the limo?
No, he didn't tell me. No. He did it. They released it during my speech. During my speech.
By the way, we'll talk about pardons in a minute, but President Trump was apparently unaware the whole time he's riding with Biden from the Capitol to the White House. From the White House to the Capitol to get sworn in. In the middle of his speech, that's when those pardons for Biden's families dropped, when it became public. Obviously, it had been done right before Biden left office. But the entire time that they're together, he didn't even tell them. It was kind of amazing. All right, I want to get into this with the panel, but before I do, I'm going to tell you about an amazing product that I have in my house. I have a LifeVac. If you have a first aid kit or a fire extinguisher, think about why you do. It's in case of an emergency. Well, what would you do in the case of a choking incident? LifeVac can literally make a hero out of anybody in the event of a choking incident. It's being used by police, fire departments, EMTs, restaurants, cruise lines, schools all over the country have a LifeVac, and you should too. You will get it fully replaced. God forbid you ever have to use it. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I talked to the company last week. Someone who listens to the show bought a LifeVac that literally saved a life. They called me and said, "You're not going to guess what happened." Somebody is alive today because they bought a LifeVac on your show, and the person is okay today. Unbelievable. So get your own. Do not wait another minute because a life could depend on it. Go to lifevac.net, lifevac.net. Do it right now because a life could literally be depending on it. All right, I want to bring in our amazing panel. Ashley Hayek, the executive director of America First Works, that really worked their butt off this cycle to get President Trump elected. Nan Hayworth, who is a doctor. She's an ophthalmologist, former member of Congress from New York's 19th District, and on the board of directors of the Independent Women's Forum. And then our buddy, Rob Bluey, the Daily Signal executive editor. Guys, good to see you all. Rob, real quick, I want to start with you because this is where my head naturally goes. When Corinne Jean-Pierre was press secretary, and I know the mainstream media never want to talk about it. You and I have talked about this in the past. Corinne Jean-Pierre cut the hard passes for 400 journalists to get into the White House. You guys suffered because of that. Have you had any luck with the new administration? I know we're like 8 hours in, but did they telegraph to you how things might be different?
Well, first of all, Sean, it's great to be with you on this glorious day. And I can tell you one thing, we're back on the email list, so we're actually getting the press releases and all of the information sent to us. Now, it's hard to believe that the Biden people would cut off access like that, but yes, from that moment of 12:01, the Daily Signal was once again receiving information from the White House press office.
Signal strong.
We will see exactly how this new Trump administration decides to go about with the briefing room and the seating arrangements and all of that. I think it's probably too early to know. Maybe we'll know later today, in fact. But we're in a good spot. You know, after Biden took away and revoked our credentials, we went through the process of legally separating from the Heritage Foundation, applying to Congress, which is now a prerequisite under Biden, obtaining congressional credentials. And so we are in a great spot, and we're actually better off today as a result of what Joe Biden did.
Don't give them any credit, Rob Bluey. All right, Ashley Hayek, literally America First Works, and you worked your tails off to help make this moment happen, and we detailed all that. That being said, when you sat back and listened to what President Trump said yesterday and then what he did, what stood out to you? What did you say, I'm so glad this happened? And I know we all have a list of like 80 things, but is there something that Ashley Hayek said, you know what, as I knocked on doors and I asked people to support President Trump in Michigan and everywhere else, I was hoping that he would do X, and I was so glad to see that yesterday. What was that?
I think overall, it's just the immediate action, promises made, promises kept. I worked on the campaign in 2020, and when we lost, when that election was, when there was the cheating happened and all of those things happened, you ask yourself why? Like, why did this happen? And it's devastating. But I really think looking back, it's a blessing in that those 4 years were critical to have that infrastructure, to identify the personnel, to map out a plan, to, showcase a very hard contrast between America First and America Last. And that opportunity, I think, prepared the president's team for an incredible first day of office with his own pardons. I think also Joe Biden giving the pardons to the J6 Commission, to Fauci, to his family members. It's an extreme admission of guilt by Joe Biden and his administration. And I think President Trump is going to continue to smoke out all of the extreme corruption that we've seen from the past 4 years and restore power back to the American people.
Yeah. Dan, the thing that I think was funny, to Ashley's point, every time the Dems try to go after President Trump, right, the lawfare, the civil attacks, the try to kick him off the ballot, right, all the stuff they did during COVID with voting, it backfires. I think I agree with Ashley. I've been saying this. He is a stronger and more effective president and will be more consequential because of what they did.
Yes. And my sainted husband has said the same thing over and over again. And I agree with all of you. Perhaps we needed this past dreadful 4 years to prove as definitively as possible without actually falling into the abyss. We got to the edge of the abyss and were pulled back because finally the left jumped the shark. And I think it may be the sleeper issue. The very overt issue, of course, was the condoned invasion, the sponsored invasion by our own government across our southern border in particular, but not limited to that. But also the gender madness, the anti-scientific gender madness that overtly threatened, in particular, girls and women. And I think that awakened a lot of people to grievous wrongs that the left was willing to inflict on the American people via their Democratic Party, via the Democrats. And people rose up and said, we can't do this anymore. We can't tolerate this. There is a limit. Everybody's talking, Democrats and Republicans, about the return of common sense, and not a moment too soon.
Sean, if I could just pick up on what Nan was saying, it's not just Trump. I mean, he's done remarkable things in just the last day with all the executive actions, but it's Republicans in Congress, too. You will remember, as I do, 8 years ago, it seemed that Republicans in Congress were disorganized. They didn't necessarily know what to do. There was a debate whether or not should you do a repeal of Obamacare first or tax cuts first, and it took a whole year to basically get all of that sorted out. I feel like they have a clear direction now about what is a priority. The Senate, shortly after President Trump took the inauguration, passed the Laken Riley Act. It'll now go back to the House. It'll get to Trump's desk. That'll probably be the first bill that he signs into law. So I am seeing a change on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the thing that was so true about this is it wasn't theoretical. People literally were living in a world of high inflation. They were watching people come over the border. They saw what was going around the world, and they were like, "Okay, this isn't a theory, like a normal proposition where it's like if my opponent does this, this will happen. Whatever. I'm living it every day." And I went, "Okay, I want to see a change." The first thing I mentioned, the White House website, and actually the thing that I thought was so telling afterwards was also in the middle of the speech, I get a text that says the CBP One app is down, right? This app that was allowing people to flow into the country. Just literally the light went off and they put up a thing that said, basically, sorry, we're closed.
And there's two things that I thought were really interesting. Number one, all of the executive orders around border security. Joe Biden and our former border czar, Kamala Harris, tried to say, well, there's nothing we can do. It's really up to Congress. And President Trump just proved them wrong instantly, that there is something you can do from minute one, whether it's shutting down the CBP One app, whether it's just signing that executive order for stay in Mexico. And I think the beauty of this is he moved so quickly. In the previous administration, the left had so much time to react to this. It's kind of amazing that they weren't prepared to react to this in a more meaningful, dramatic way. But
were
it's happening.
You surprised though? To your point, I keep wondering, am I surprised at the reaction, or Are they just this? And I'm being serious. Like, I'm not trying to be insulting, but do you think that they just can't respond, or that they're just not coordinated, or they're just bad? I mean, like, I'm
there's two pieces. Number one, as he's talking about, the invasion at our southern border and the fentanyl coming into our communities, and Republicans are clapping, and behind him, the Democrats are sitting there sour-faced with their arms crossed. It's like, did you miss the memo? Did you not understand that this was a top 2 issue for every single voter across the country? And that's why you continue to lose. But they don't, it's like they can't get their head around it. But honestly, if you remember, you look at, the kids in cages and just like the outrageous claims that they made, I thought they would have had a more offensive attack on, his border issues. And I just haven't seen it. I think that just underscores the point that the left is still so divided. There's no unity. And that's why it's so important for the conservative movement to stay as united as possible, get President Trump's nominees through, make sure we're elevating all of the messaging and the framing, and making sure that the policies are getting directly connected to the American people so they realize, this is because of this new administration. This is because of America First. We can never go back.
Sean, if I can just offer a quick thought, I think they are that arrogant and that complacent as well. They have really had, if we look at it, they have had a hegemonic combination of our, not only government, the deep state, and those 51 security clearances that have been yanked have been argued persuasively. Rod Martin said it as the first blow against the deep state, but also every institution, practically, as we all know, academia, popular culture. I mean, we came this close. Look how they got behind Kamala Harris, who is as overt an idiot as you will ever see in American public life, and completely advanced according to her identity, completely from start to finish. So they were that arrogant. They were that complacent. They are clinging to it now, as we all know. All we can do is forge ahead with the Common Sense Coalition and pray for their discernment.
Yeah. Let me talk about the people. This is something that I keep saying, it's the people, the process, and the policies, right? Let's talk about the people for a second, because I think yesterday, one of the things that I think didn't get as much pickup because it was all a bunch of one-offs, they went in and surgically removed a ton of people, including like the Commandant of the Coast Guard for DEI concerns that they had. The FAA administrator, TSA administrator was told, step down. Person after person was removed. Career folks at the State Department removed. So there's the outgoing, get them out, and then there's the incoming people. Like they went in and started to put in key people in key places to move the agenda. And it's just something I kept thinking back to 2017 when we had an acting attorney general, and she wouldn't execute what Trump was saying. So Trump removed her and then elevated one of the U.S. attorneys to acting attorney general. That was just, again, this is because they had the time to think about it and to do it. As you guys recall, I made a big deal. I was fired off of the board of the U.S. Naval Academy, unprecedented. I'd been advising the team to just fire all the appointees, and they're executing on that. I don't think that's my idea, but my point is these guys went in and pulled the right people out and are starting to put the right people in, Rob.
They saw from 8 years ago how difficult these bureaucrats and some of these career officials could make their life and implementing the MAGA agenda. And so they're not going to repeat that mistake this time again. So personnel is policy. I'm glad to see that they are putting such a strong focus on it. And until they have these Senate-confirmed cabinet secretaries, it appears they will have acting secretaries in place who are actually willing to execute on what the president's directives are, as opposed to the past where you had individuals who would stymie it. Sean, there was a recent poll that came out from Scott Rasmussen that showed that those in the federal government are there to basically stymie and resist the president's agenda, particularly those who voted for Kamala Harris. They are going to continue to be a thorn in the president's side and try to do everything they can to block the rules and regulations from going into effect. So the job doesn't stop on day one. This is just the beginning, but it's going to take 4 years or more for this administrative state to be cleaned up the way it needs to.
Actually, he also revoked the security clearances of those 51 intelligence officials that lied about the Hunter Biden laptop and calling it Russian disinformation. Again, it's symbolic, but I think important. These people used positions that gave them a security clearance, government positions that they went out and tried to misinform the American people and sway an election based on lies.
Good riddance to all of them. And this is
Bye-bye.
probably it's probably a very unpopular opinion. However, I believe that after you serve, you should lose your clearance. You don't need that. Take that with you into the private sector. It's gone. You're done. Because we have had these career bureaucrats who have weaponized their position, that take advantage of the taxpayers, that, completely just obliterate the trust in government. And then they're able to negotiate their contracts when they get out of government, and they're fully taking advantage of the system. So until we have like a hard reset, I don't think you should take that anymore. It's done. Your job serving the government is over. Strip that clearance and move on. They can apply with their new private company or whatever they may be doing.
Nan, though, I think he sends a very big I think if you're sitting in your job today in the government, they've made it clear, right? They are not afraid. They know what they're doing. They know what they want to do. And you're either on board or you're gone.
Absolutely. President Trump knows this government now from the inside, which he did not when he was elected and in 2016. Now he does. And that makes all the difference. He knows all the workings of government. So he has made it clear in his executive orders that he will not tolerate the kind of ideological bias towards the left, toward all of their corrupt philosophies. He made, as we all know, significant EOs yesterday, rescinding so-called DEI orders, that whole universe, critical race theory, said no longer enshrined in our federal government, in its hiring, in its promotions. So he's sending a very clear message, and agreed, of course, those 51 security clearances, the firings, including the woman who was in charge, I think, Deputy Secretary of the Navy. I may have that. You'll know, Sean. Thank you for your service.
I got rid of all. It's too numerous. Literally, the stories coming out, it was just one after another. I want to get to the media, to the media covering this in just a second. And Rob, I'll lead with you, because there was just, it's unbelievable, some of these guys, their attempts to that. But before I do that, I just want to, if you have made wellness and getting healthy part of your 2025 New Year's resolution, I've got some good news for you. I'm with you. That's number one. I've told you guys before, he's now the Assistant Deputy National Security Advisor, or Senior Director for Counterterrorism. Seb Gorka, been on the show a ton. He looks phenomenal. I asked him months ago, what are you doing? He told me about PhD weight loss. And I said, let me get in on that. So I met with the folks at My PhD Weight Loss. You can too if you give them a call, 1-864-644-1900. Tell them I sent you, or go to myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com. And I'm just going to tell you, it's not a diet. I've done a million of them. It's like a yo-yo with me, right? Atkins, keto, Mediterranean, the Southern Massachusetts diet. I'm kidding. There's not one of those, but you know what I'm getting at. And so the difference with this is that you get assigned a nutritionist that you meet with weekly. I text with mine, and that's how, you can walk through things. They create a plan for you. They help you with the initial food allotment, because they want it to be a change in lifestyle, not a fad diet. And they get you to where you want to go and then help you maintain. I'm already down a few myself. So go to myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com, and make wellness and getting healthy part of your 2025. All right, Rob, I said I would talk about the media. So first it was Biblegate, because apparently Trump's hand didn't touch the top of the Bible, and therefore maybe it wasn't legit. I mean, it was almost like the media was going out of their way to find something. And then it went up a notch. Let me show you Hallie Jackson's piece from the Today Show, that exemplifies their latest degree of outrage. Take a look.
Thanking the president's supporters at a rally following the swearing in.
This one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen.
Then repeatedly raising his arm in a gesture critics quickly compared to a Nazi salute.
My heart goes out to you.
Okay, she goes on in the piece, Rob, to say that the ADL, which is a left-wing group, basically said, we don't think Elon Musk was making anything. We're not outraged by this. And yet Hallie Jackson, if they're not outraged by it, if the ADL that gets outraged by everything and is a left-wing organization that would normally attack Trump, and it says, hey, we're not outraged. It's like she wanted you just to see it, by the way, because Elon, the way he raised his hand in some countries could be seen as she literally was trying to figure out, how can I make this a controversy?
That's exactly what they were doing. I mean, they were looking for anything possible yesterday to try to take away from the accomplishments of Donald Trump. Sean, it was a great privilege to be inside Capital One Arena yesterday. I was there when Elon spoke. I can tell you, being amongst all of the Trump fans, nobody even had that thought cross their mind. It was only those in the media who were making a big deal about it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I will say about this, I think that they are so divorced from reality and they live in their own thought bubble that they don't even have any interaction. I was embarrassed to be sitting in the press section yesterday when they asked people to stand during the prayer or other things like the national anthem, and you had reporters sitting there on their laptop who didn't even have the courtesy to show respect.
I wish you had filmed that. I wish you had filmed that.
Have.
I mean, that's disrespectful, but that just shows you who they are, and that's. I mean, I hate to say it, but to not stand for the national anthem, to sit there on your computer, it's frankly, I mean, it really is disrespectful for a bunch of people who love to talk about the Constitution and the First Amendment and freedom of the press, not to acknowledge the amazing country that we have that gives them those freedoms in the most basic ways, shows you who they are at their core. I wish that you had recorded that, Rob Bluey, because that would have gone viral. And it's given me an idea. The next time I'm at an event like that, I'm going to make sure that I film that. And it's unfortunate because most of us, I can probably speak for the four of us, would have been standing with our hand over our heart, paying reverence to the flag and the United States of America. But now I'm going to, please, if you see me filming, don't think I'm being disrespectful to our country because I want to expose these folks. But actually, it went further than that. I'm sitting there this morning flipping around as I always do. And Marco Rubio, our brand new Secretary of State, confirmed 9920, who is waking up dealing with hostages in Hamas, Ukraine, North Korea, China, Russian aggression, dare I go on, goes on the Today Show. And I want to play for you how the interview with Craig Melvin went. Go.
Mr. Secretary, congratulations. Good morning to you, first of all, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
As you know, President Trump, as you just heard there as well, pardoned nearly all 1,600 of the January 6th defendants. I recall that you said shortly after the attack on the Capitol, where you were that day, that it was one of the saddest days in American history.
So let's just, okay, Ashley, you get the first interview with the first Hispanic Secretary of State, who was just confirmed 9920, and there's a million things in the world going on, and you ask him about January 6th. That, again, I don't know why I'm surprised. I don't know why I'm outraged, but it's like NBC News has gone full MSNBC.
Well, and they're not going to want to highlight the hostages who were released. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that the president said America will be first moving forward, that we're going to stop these wars, put a freeze on any sort of expenditures that are going out. They don't want to acknowledge any of that because that's the will of the people. And that's what the popular vote, all of the Americans supported when they voted for Donald Trump. It's interesting. It kind of reminds me a little bit. It made me think of the interview with the Notre Dame football coach a couple weeks ago when they said, how does it feel to be the first Black, college football coach going into the NFL? And he's like, wait a minute, what about the quality of the players? What about the team? And
right.
Really just kind of shun that. But they fixate on these single issues, whether it's January 6th, whether it's DEI, whether it's, bad MAGA, abortion. They have just these 4 talking points all the time. And that's why they keep losing. So I hope they keep doing that because they just continue to look like idiots.
Yeah. All right. I want to get into the executive orders, but before they do that, I loved the optics of yesterday. I really loved the optics. And I felt like if you didn't know any better, you would have thought that was like a month-long planned out ceremony, not a 2-day event that got reshuffled because of the weather. And by the way, I was outside last night. I walked the dog in the day, and then I was outside later. When I say frigid cold, I'm from New England. I can handle cold weather. I was chilled to the bone within like 2 minutes. And so just for all the whiners out there on the left that were like, oh, was it weather? Yeah, it was weather. But Nan, okay, it's your turn up. So I'm going to ask you the one other optical thing. I thought Melania Trump, Usha Vance, the gentlemen themselves, Trump and JD, they looked so classy. Like, I don't mean to turn this into a fashion segment, but I was obsessed with the optics yesterday of everything, how well it looked, how well the backdrops were. And then as individuals, Usha Vance, I mean, what a beautiful, I mean, she was elegant, Melania Trump. And you know what? I'm confident enough to say this. I thought Donald Trump, like everything about that just looked beautiful.
Yeah. Well, yes. And Sean, all of us here have been in public life in various forms. It's a sign of respect for your audience to observe dress and decorum, which is not to say, in fairness to former President Biden, Mrs. Biden, and former Second Lady, Vice President Harris, rather, and Second Gentleman, all of whom dressed appropriately. But it was wonderful to see all of them not only dress in a very, classic and elegant, non-ostentatious style by designers affiliated with our country. Oscar De La Renta, talk about vibe shift. Oscar De La Renta's website was trumpeting how they dressed Usha Vance. They showed all their outfits, but also the way they carry themselves, their expressions, all of those things, their attitude toward their guests, toward our military, the first ball, the commander-in-chief's ball, and there they all are dancing not only with the spouses, the first lady and with the president, second lady, with vice president, but also with the military. Wonderful message, wonderful optics. It is the semiotics of dress and behavior. It makes a difference. And class and truly patriotic, dignified behavior are back.
Yeah. I don't know how you couldn't feel hopeful just looking at Trump and J.D. Vance and their spouses. I mean, after 4 years of that dour look on Joe Biden's face or the scowl on Kamala Harris's face, I mean, you just as an American feel very proud to see them and how, as Nan said, they really carry themselves. And I'm hopeful that for the next 4 years, Americans will start to see that different side of Donald Trump that so many saw during this campaign because he decided to go outside of those media gatekeepers and tell his story directly to the American people.
Actually, the last thing, go ahead.
I just need to add one more point. I think one of my takeaways was the fine details. So when the president and the first lady and J.D. Vance and they all went to the Blair House, I don't know if you noticed this, but they had the Republican women had their hair pulled back. Mm-hmm. It was very styled very nicely. And Jill Biden's hair is like blowing all over the place. It's like polar vortex right now. And she just looks like a hot mess. And then our ladies are like very well put together. You could tell they paid attention to those details because that's what you do when you're doing presidential level work. But more importantly, one of the balls I saw Kai Trump dancing with Donald Trump Jr. and just the level of just the family togetherness is what I love. It's, these amazing families between the two, the Vance Trump family, that's the priority, all of them coming together. It was really beautiful to see and just class. And I absolutely love that.
I agree. Nan, since you're a former member of Congress, I get the shtick that John Fetterman tries to pull off, but there's a sense of showing up to the inauguration. I think he had like Crocs, shorts, and a Carhartt sweatshirt on. I get that's his shtick, but you're in the rotunda of the Capitol for the swearing in of the president and vice president. And I kind of found it a little disrespectful.
Well, Sean, it's dress and decorum. And I've joked about it, but I said over a year ago, I said, look, if he votes the right way, I don't care if he shows up in a Speedo. But that said, I think I did say that in public. But that said, yes, it is just, again, it is a way of conveying respect for your audience, respect for the gravity of your job and your position. If you don't want to be obligated to do that, don't run for office, an office that has a very august responsibility. That said, I welcome his recognizing that he represents a state that is right at the center of American life and of American political challenges. And he's willing to work with President Trump. And I'm glad about that. I do wish he could just make that little bit of an effort and put on a suit and tie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. That's was all I was looking for.
Or at least a Pittsburgh Steelers sweatshirt. Come on.
Exactly. All right. One of the things that I'm excited for is this whole DOGE thing, the Department of Government Efficiency, and the idea of actually getting our spending under control and making government work in a more efficient way. Because a lot of people keep saying, well, we can grow our way out of the deficit. And that may be even true. I don't think so, but maybe it is. But the reality is that keeps the underlying problem there, which is that the government's bloated, it's inefficient, it's ineffective in a lot of ways, it's duplicitous. And the thing about that, Ashley, is I'm excited for what Elon and the rest of this group do and trying to get the government to actually, it's obviously it is not the private sector. I get that. But I also think that doesn't mean that we can't have that kind of ingenuity come into government and figure out how we can make things run better.
Agree. And like the executive order requiring federal workers, if you want your paycheck, you need to show up to work. You need to physically go to work. It's so interesting because on Mondays and Fridays, when I go into town for work, there's absolutely zero traffic. But then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there's more traffic because people are actually going into work. I have a 5-day, sometimes 6-day work week. If you are collecting taxpayer dollars, you should also have a 5-day work week, at least, to fulfill your obligation. But the other thing that I've been thinking about, Sean, is this upcoming spring, we'll have the reconciliation bill, the budget bill. And I hope that the Congress uses that as DOGE 2.0 to be able to maximize everything that we possibly do with the budget to cut excessive spending, to think about how we can be more creative with how we're spending taxpayer dollars. And that should be an extension. I hope that Elon Musk is involved in that process to some regard, in addition to the great work that he's doing, with the executive offices and the agencies.
All right, Nan, you are the
for one quick second.
No, I want you to jump in a lot but I want you to touch on this when you're done with it. But after you make your point, you're the member of Congress here. I want you to tell me, what does that appetite look like to get this to deal with this, and is it realistic?
Yeah. I will answer that, Sean, in a second. Just wanted to make this point for your listeners, our listeners, who may or may not be aware of this. The reason Ashley's mentioning, I actually don't want to read your mind, but one reason to mention a reconciliation bill is because those are the only bills that can be passed by the Senate with a simple majority vote. Every other bill needs 60 votes, which means in a Senate that has 54 Republicans, we need 6 Democrat votes. We can't count on those. Right. So that's why we rely so heavily on reconciliation mechanisms in the current climate. With regard to the appetite for members of Congress to work with the agenda, Sean, our challenge is, and everybody here knows it, is that most people do love the idea, or at least understand the idea of cutting spending. But the problem is when you get down to cases and you find out that it's your ox or your district's ox that's getting gored. And then it gets very, very tricky. And that's why, that's when the horse trading starts, and when you have earmarks, it gets easier. But of course, we don't want earmarks. We don't want to do that. So I am heartened by the fact that in the speaker vote, that just took place a couple of weeks ago, there was only, thank goodness, one round of dissent. And then everybody got in line because I think they recognize that it's now or never. And they have to be able to communicate to their districts that in order to work for them most powerfully, they've got to do some things that in the short term may cause, some challenges that we'd all rather not necessarily have to deal with. But keeping that eye on the prize, being really great communicators, and the White House needs that as well. Of course, as we all know, crucial, the White House needs it. That's the way we're going to get this done. It's not going to be easy.
And Sean, there's another big deadline coming up on March 14th. That's when government spending runs out. So as Ashley said, you'll have budget reconciliation, but you also will have this government spending bill as another opportunity. Those are the must-pass pieces of legislation where things are most likely to probably be accomplished. And as Congressman Ralph Norman told the Daily Signal after he was one of those holdouts for Speaker Mike Johnson, his beef is that Johnson has negotiated with Democrats. He just wants Republicans to be on the same page. Anytime you bring Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer into the picture, you're probably looking at an increase in government spending. Republicans need to figure this out and figure out how to cut and align with what Elon Musk is doing at Doge.
Ashley, to Rob's point, I've talked to a lot of members of Congress in the last 48 hours, and they all kind of are like, they all say the right stuff right now. I mean, I'm not questioning their motives, but I mean, they're like, President Trump's got a team. I don't feel like I wonder, well, let's just put it this way. I wonder how long that team stays together, because you're right. On this reconciliation bill, they got to all be on the same team. There's no Democrat that's going to vote for this, and they don't have room to spare, and they've got to keep focused on, as Nan put it correctly, the big prize.
That's right. So they need to remember, number one, President Trump has specifically asked for one big, beautiful bill. And so this is where the president's priorities are going to come out, is through this big, beautiful bill. And people need to coalesce behind that, because I truly believe the president will be in his office will be very involved in this. The second piece is, this is why majorities and expanding the majority matters. Politics matters. The reason Mike Johnson has spoke to some of these Democrats is because you do have some hardline Republicans that aren't budging. And we do need to have Republicans unite around a bill that can be successful. And we need to start making sure we can expand the majority so we're not in this position in the future. A lot of our more delicate seats are in California and New York. And those are, way more blue and purple districts. If we can start expanding the map a little bit more, it would give us some wiggle room to be more aggressive. But in the interim, we do need to unite as a party now more than ever in order to make sure we're advancing the America First agenda and the priorities set by the president.
Nan, as this bill, like, where's the balance going to be between, if we do one big, beautiful bill, it's going to be big. It's going to be a lot of pages. And so there's a lot of us that distrust big, beautiful bills that come out of Congress these days. The last one's 1,547 pages, and people started going, I didn't know that was in there. I didn't know that was in there. So how do you balance that so that members of Congress can say, I want to be for this, as opposed to, I can't vote for a 5,000-page bill?
Yeah. And especially since certainly when I was running in 2010, one of the big issues was, make the bills understandable to the layperson. Why don't we have one issue bills? Why don't we vote on each issue separately? Now that becomes, that's ideal. But we all know that funding is cobbled together, and this is a big part of our problem, by many different laws, the implementation of many different laws. The funding of these implementations is adjusted. Pots of money are moved around, so you can't have just one issue per bill. So you're right, Sean. It is a massive logistical problem. And I'll tell you one thing, and I'm thinking of New York. My representative is Mike Lawler. I've known him for years and years. He's very adroitly managed, to Ashley's point, the politics of a purple district at best. And one of the things he said in public is, I cannot support a bill that doesn't provide state and local tax relief, SALT deduction relief, right, for my constituents. I get it. I'm in New York. I want all the SALT deduction I can get. But when you say those things in public, I think I understand why, but it benefits him politically, and maybe it helps, move, the needle persuasively toward that kind of accommodation and bill. But I think we need to look as unified as possible to the American people. All of that horse trading, all of the disputes should be in the family, in the House Republican conference room. When we emerge to talk to the public, we need to be unified, because the less we are, the less persuasive we are.
Yeah, I think that's 100% correct. Rob, like, in terms of coverage, when you start thinking about everything that you guys need to do from the Daily Signal point of view, meaning, there's only so much you can cover or do. You can only have so many staff. I'm sure you'd love more. But how much of it is going to be focused on spending, on DOGE, on reconciliation versus whatever else the president is doing?
Sean, first of all, I'd say that as we've touched on earlier, there will be establishment and legacy media organizations that try to paint a narrative. They've already started from day one that this administration is doing things. NBC broke in with a special report last night to cover the president signing the executive orders. Did they focus on those immigration orders or energy or everything? No, they focused on January 6th. So, I mean, they are going to do, as you saw in the Marco Rubio interview, everything that they can to distract and derail this administration. And so what do we do at the Daily Signal, and what I hope other conservative news organizations do, is focus on the substance and the policy. And so, I mean, we're squarely centered right here on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So, yes, we will be covering those spending fights. And as we know, there's a monopoly of news organizations on Capitol Hill that have for too long controlled that narrative. And the Daily Signal wants to be a disruptor. And I'm grateful to see other conservative news organizations investing in this space as well, because we need to present an alternative for the American people to get their news.
Absolutely. Ashley, I got 30 seconds left. What role you guys at America First Works and then obviously America First Policy Institute were instrumental in getting President Trump elected and then ready for day one? What do you see the role going forward for you guys?
Well, we're actually super excited. 48 hours after the election, we sent a text message to every single low propensity, no propensity people who don't, frequently vote, who is a Republican, Democrat, or independent, saying, welcome to the America First movement. What do you want to see in the first 100 days of a new administration? And we logged all of that data. We now have that data going nationally. So we are making sure that we are tracking the issues that people care about. We're sharing that data with other like-minded organizations that are interested in advancing policy at the federal and state level. I look at this really simple. Whether it's AFPI or AFW, you have your first 30 days elevating the executive orders and letting the American people know exactly what the president is doing. We have our first 6 months, which includes getting our nominees through the process and making sure there's appropriate pressure where pressure is needed so that every single Republican senator confirms President Trump's nominees. And that's secretaries and deputy secretaries and everyone in between. Number 3, it's getting behind that big, beautiful reconciliation bill we just talked about. And we are already starting to advance and target. We're putting up infrastructure in Minnesota, in New Mexico, in New York, New Jersey. We just launched the state chapter. We're expanding our state chapters into Ohio, Wisconsin. So we're really excited to have boots on the ground for a 24/7, 365 operation, just like the left does, with no days off.
That's awesome. All right, guys, I appreciate you joining me here today. We are going to have a crazy week ahead of us. I think a lot more is going to get done. The president's got some big announcements all week long. We'll get them to you all. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. And as always, go to SeanSpicer.com to sign up for my twice weekly newsletter with amazing insights into this administration and some secret surprises that you can always get if you're a VIP member. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.